welcome back to the Corporate Burnouts. Hey, Mandy, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. How was your holiday weekend?
It was good. Kind of rainy. It was not the nicest. We went to Colorado last week and it was such a fun trip, but we just ran into a whole bunch of rain and cold for the holiday weekend. We were surprised, but it was
That
good.
really sucks. I mean, I'm glad that you had a great trip and Colorado is beautiful regardless, but we had sunny skies and lots of pool time and sunburns
I
and
know I saw the pool pictures. I was like, we don't get to sit by a pool at
I
all.
know.
We did though. So what we did do before the weather turned, we went to Glenwood Springs and they have the hot springs there. Have you ever been to the hot springs there? I'm sure you've been to other
Haven't
hot
been
springs.
there, but I've been to a hot springs. Yeah.
It was so good. It was like the perfect day for it. It wasn't like too cold when you got out of the hot pools and it wasn't too hot with the sun, you know what I mean? Like it was pretty
Yeah.
perfect. And Dan had done that once before. We went to Pagosa Springs in Colorado last year
Yeah.
and but like they were all just so happy. Everyone was just so happy. They're like, this is the best ever. And it makes your skin feel so good, really dry, but it makes it feel so good. And I was like, I wish that they had those here because I think it's really good for
Love it
you.
when my skin feels that way. In fact, I think
Mhm.
I think that's why I like really look forward to like the first sunburn of a summer because it
Mhm.
dries up my skin. I don't like how overly oily skin, but I like that it
Yeah,
kind of
it does.
resets and refreshes. And then I use a ton of moisturizer and lotion all summer long to try to bring it back. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Getting on topic here of what we want to talk about today. We've had a lot of conversations in some of our previous podcasts, and I feel like there's like a common thread through a lot of them, and it's a lot about your identity and how we allow our jobs to like infiltrate our own perception of who we are. And I thought it could be really cool if we kind of dive into mine and yours individually, but also together, our post corporate identity crisis that we've kind of gone through and in some ways are
Yeah,
still going through.
it's been crazy. Yeah, it's so crazy. I was actually telling someone today, I'm like, I was taught that you go find a company and you be loyal and you stay there until you retire. And I might have said that on this podcast at some point too, that that's
Probably
kind
because
of
it's true.
yeah, but that's kind of how I was raised, like that's what I saw
Yeah.
people doing. They didn't job hop, they didn't start their own thing. They either ran their own business or they worked for somebody and that those were your two choices. And and it is crazy to jump off the bus early. Like when I really think about it, I never thought that I would quit. I never thought that I would work for myself ever. And it is a huge adjustment. And it's still
I
4
didn't
years later, it's still a huge adjustment.
still, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't see that. And I guess I did in some ways, but leaving my job was a complete life change for me because it doesn't just impact the work that I do or where I spend my time in work related things, but like your social life is wrapped up in it. Like it literally rewired my brain. And in some
Yeah,
ways,
it's your whole identity, really, if you
yes,
think about it. I think that Elena said something like, it's hard to introduce yourself without saying your job title, right? Without
yeah,
saying what you do for a living. And we still do something for a living, obviously, but it was who we were, and you don't want that to be like that, but it's like we are what we do for 8 to 15 hours every day.
yeah. I mean, I don't feel like my job title necessarily was, I mean, I guess in a way, because obviously like I'm in marketing, people know me as a marketing girl.
Mhm,
And that
mhm,
part, thankfully, it's like the one piece of my life that didn't change because I still
mhm.
know myself in that way. But I
Yeah.
was very tied to that brand. We worked
Mhm,
for what is now the largest casual dining chain in America, which is incredible.
mhm.
And when you
Yeah.
work for a company that has such an incredible reputation that is grown, that is super huge, and you're really proud to be there, it's
Mhm.
easy to attach your identity to that because it's such a positive thing. And then coming out of that, and I'll say again, neither one of us left because Texas Roadhouse was horrible. It was not. It was incredible. But in the role that we were in and in the lifestyle that we needed for our lives, it didn't fit anymore. Not being associated with Texas Roadhouse, I think wasn't just weird for me. It was the shock value for everybody that I told. It was
Mhm.
like I broke up with a company and I didn't I didn't like mean to do that, but I didn't realize how encompassing it was in my identity. So walking away from that, it was like, shit, if I'm not that, then who am I? And then you
Uh-huh.
go and think about like who you actually are and what you're doing now. And that brings a whole nother level of like explanation and all of the things. But
Uh-huh.
I think that you and I were both really lucky, right? Like we walked away from our corporate world and knew what we were going to do. We had a plan and we immediately went to that mission. You obviously
Uh-huh.
did it much sooner than I did. So I had you in that world. So there was still some consistency for me. But I think one of my biggest struggles was, the complete workday shift. I don't know what to do on a Wednesday without conference calls or Friday morning there were specific things that
Uh-huh.
happened without fail that were no longer a part of my rhythm and routine that it's like, what do I do now?
I
How do I
mean,
structure
that
my
was
time?
so hard for me. I have never been a morning person. I am more now than I ever was. Like I can't sleep. I mean, you're not still, but I can't sleep past like 7:30 a.m. really at all now. But I never wanted to get up early for work stuff. So whenever I didn't have a place to be at a certain time, that was the hugest adjustment because it's like you can't when you're trying to build a business, you cannot sleep all day, right? Because I had to
Not cool as
hustle.
hell. Yeah.
No. And I know I've talked about this before, but I did not have enough clients to quit my job. Like I should not have quit when I did. I'm glad that I did because it gave me the fear to like go out there and hustle. But
Yeah.
I couldn't just sleep all day, right? I used to get up and I would start to do some stuff and I had a couple of clients and I had stuff that I could do, but I didn't wear pants for a lot of it. I didn't, and it took me a little while
I'm
to figure
guilty.
out. Yeah. I mean, obviously, everyone doesn't wear pants sometimes while working at home, but I learned really quickly that I needed to schedule myself for something, for a meeting first thing in the morning every day, a networking meeting or a one on one meeting or a meeting with a potential client. Like that needed to be the first thing that I did so that I had to get ready and I had to start my day.
Yeah.
Because once I'm going, I'm like, I can pretty much go
You
until
get into
bedtime.
you get into a
Hmm.
flow. Your rhythm
Yes.
takes off. But I will
But if
tell
I
you, I
never
think
really get started, if you don't ever really get started for the day, there's no momentum. And so that was really
there's nothing to
something that was
build off
hard for
of.
me.
I
Hmm.
think one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with in restructuring my workday is that I was really happy to like wipe the calendar clear when I left my job, right? Like, because 100% of my life was on that calendar. What I was doing
Uh-huh.
from hour to hour to hour. I had all of my family stuff on there, all of my work things, where I was supposed to be when. And it's
Uh-huh.
funny because I feel like my memory was stronger then too, probably because I kept it on a calendar. I could tell you
Uh-huh.
where I was last Tuesday, and because I knew where I was, I knew what I had to eat. I knew what hotel I had
Uh-huh.
stayed at. I knew whatever. I knew all of
Uh-huh.
the details of what I had for dinner last night, and I don't care. It don't matter. I can tell you that I
Well,
slept at home because I do every single day.
yeah.
My kids pretty much self-manage their own calendar, but now they have to remind me of things because I'm not putting it on a calendar. So I
Uh-huh.
have slowly but surely gotten back into not being afraid of Outlook calendars and putting things back in some structure and routine and like kind of climbing back to that. But I feel maybe a little bit more possessive of personal time and personal needs now than I did before.
Uh-huh.
Those boundaries are a little bit stronger. And I guess to be honest, I don't know if my boundaries are stronger or if I'm just in a place where I work with someone who appreciates those things. So I don't feel like my boundaries are challenged anymore.
Yeah.
But putting those things on a calendar and getting back to some structure um has been helpful. Like you said, on the days where I
Yeah.
have to meet with a client or there's an appointment or we're recording a podcast or something
Tell
that
them
gives
though, tell them
structure.
about how you freak out when you have more than one thing on the calendar in a day.
What do you mean?
You'll be like, "Oh my God, my calendar's so full." And you'll
Oh, well,
have
that's
like
not really, yeah,
three
that's
things.
not really a freak out. So different because I went from like my calendar before looked like Easter threw up on it with all the color coded appointments and I knew what they meant. I knew like it was all very
Mhm.
programmed into my brain and it was laid out that way on my calendar. And I've been out of that world for just over 2 years now. And because of that, it's like now if I have something literally on the calendar every day, I'm like, whoa, busy. Like, look at me, girl. Like, I had a 30-minute meeting. That's it. That's
I
all. Like, not to say that that's
just
all
the
I had
one
going on,
today.
but it's all that had to be
Yeah,
on the
you work all
calendar
day, but
to work around it. So yeah, I'm like, my calendar is so full. And Mandy's like, please. But bitch, you don't know what a full
yeah,
calendar looks like. But the part of the work
no.
that I do and the part of the work that you do is very
Mm.
different. My calendar is never going to fill up with meetings, or else I would have no time to do the
Yeah,
work
to
that
do the
comes
work.
out of
So
those
I do the
meetings. So,
meetings for the most part so that you can do the work. But it's really interesting because my calendar stays really full with meetings and potential client stuff and talking to you and Mallory and there's a lot of things on it, right? But one thing that is not on it is random conference calls that are super unnecessary for me to be on. Okay. So there's been a couple throughout time. We've had clients who handle themselves in more of a corporation way and they're like, we need our marketing team on, and I'm like, no you don't, send me an
really?
email, you're not going to have that much for us to but I don't have all of those conference calls. So one of the things that was really hard for me was getting out of the routines of walking. I was so committed for so many years to walking every single day for at least a half an hour because I always had one conference call a day at least that I just had to be on. I just had to
Yeah.
listen. And
You
once in
can
a while,
pop
I'd
in
have
your
to say a couple
AirPods.
things.
Yeah, you can pop in your
And so I
AirPods and
used
just
that
go.
time. Yeah, I use that time. And now I don't have any, there's nothing that I do that I don't need to be involved in. And
Yeah.
so now I have to be more strategic about it and I have to take time away from working, right, to do it. And I have to take time away from the downtime that I want to have with my family. And it's interesting. It's interesting. But one thing that really helped me, and I'm still trying to talk Mandy into this, of no matter what the day looks like, you have to get ready. You have to get up and be completely ready and like wear pants, because
Listen, I just
that
want you to see that I am dressed. I am
you
all the
are
way dressed,
dressed.
okay?
You are
Like,
dressed.
not just from the waist up because I'm gonna be on camera. You're
But you
welcome.
had to go,
Also,
you had to take a kid to the doctor. But
yeah,
if you
like
hadn't,
this wasn't for you.
no, no. But what I'm saying is like I always for the first probably 2 years that I ran this business, if I didn't have a networking meeting or a meeting with somebody else at 9 a.m., I would take a shower, sometimes not take a shower right away. I would get completely dressed and ready in yoga pants and whatever, and I would go walking sometime when it made sense. Because the other thing that you have to do is, especially with what we do now, is you have to figure out when you're the most creative. And I never had to do that before. It's like I just had to follow the schedule, right? And now
Yeah.
I have to schedule myself to do the things. And so sometimes when I would start to hit a wall, I would be ready. I mean, I put on the tennis shoes, right? I got completely dressed so
Oh,
that
you had
the
to go
second
ready to
that I
leave the house. Yeah.
yeah, the second that I hit that wall where I'm like, okay, I've said fuck this twice in, 10 minutes. And then I would stand up and I would go walking for 30 minutes and I would come back and I would be so refreshed and back where my brain needed to be to keep going. And that was a whole new thing. That's just way outside of the routine, but it became the new routine. It
It
just took me
became
a
the
little
new
while.
routine. And that's the thing
Hmm.
is it's like I feel like I mean I'm 42 years old. I'm 2 years into this in multiple ways, right? In a whole completely different life
Hmm.
because, shortly before that I went through a divorce. So it's like literally I took this box of my life and just dumped it upside down and in some ways it's like okay, now it's empty. What do we put in it? Well, whatever you want. But what is that? How do you figure out what that looks like? And so it's taken time and I can tell you right now, I'm not done. I don't know. There are still probably hobbies and interests that I have not gone after or sought out that may eventually become part of who I am in my new identity. I don't know. I have
Hmm.
kids who are not too far off from graduating high school, and the loss of that responsibility will be a complete game changer. So, all of the shifts and the changes are not over entirely for me, but I feel like I'm coming into this like completely new version of myself. And while I'm saying that, when I look back to who I was, let's say even 3 years ago, right? Like still in a marriage, still in corporate, still in that world, and think, I mean, that's me, right? But like looking back at who I was, how I was, the way my brain worked, like, on autopilot on things, I'm already a completely different person. And I don't think that's a bad thing, I think I was really, really scared of that. I was scared of that coming out of a divorce. I was scared of that in leaving corporate. But fear is, first of all, fear is a motherfucker, and it will keep you in something not meant for you for far too freaking long. But what I have learned is that on the other side of fear, there is freedom. And that freedom is not just, from the bullshit of your 9 to 5 or from whatever it is that you've conquered that fear from, but it's opportunity, which is something else to be scared about, right? Like if you leave your corporate world or whatever it is that you want to leave behind, you can do anything that you want. But then what does that look like?
So something that was really scary for me, there was a free, you felt free and all of that, but I felt kind of like a fraud too. And I felt that imposter syndrome. And
Yeah.
that was really hard for me because I had, in the few years before I quit corporate, really figured myself out, right? I went through the big breakup. I had to figure out who I was by myself. And I felt like I had separated myself because that was also COVID was just after that. And then you're like, man, I can be alone. Like I have to be alone sometimes for days at a time. And I think that I knew who I was, right? And I felt confident. I felt completely confident. And I had cheerleaders behind me who were like, you can freaking like go do this. But I still felt like whenever I went on to LinkedIn to change my profile, whenever I set up the socials for Essential Marketing Group, whenever I did all of those things, I was like, first of all, everyone's going to judge me. They're going to think
Yeah.
that I can't do this. And that wasn't all in my head. I guarantee that was happening. Like there would be shares on my social posts and I'm like, they're just sharing with each other. Like, what the fuck is she doing? But I felt like such a fraud. And I was like, they're all going to see when I change my stuff and I'm going to write owner, right? I'm not going to be CEO or, I'm going to be the owner of this business that I start. And I'm not an owner. I'm an employee. I'm a middle manager,
Yeah,
like
because
I'm not an
that's what you
owner.
have in your head, right? But
Yeah.
the sad part about that is that when you are stepping into those shoes of being an owner and starting a business and all of those things, prior to doing that, you envision those things to make you proud, right? Like you have arrived. Like
Hmm.
I have earned my way here. I'm stepping into what I've built, what I
Hmm.
know that I'm capable of and rising to the challenge. But when you're doing it, it doesn't feel that way. And obviously, my experience with that is a little bit different than yours. I didn't so much have the imposter syndrome in that way because I'm not the owner, but I was taking a huge risk, right? And, leaping out there with you to do something different in my life to have the lifestyle that I wanted and still be doing work that I really loved. I think the imposter side of me, like you guys will probably see on our social media accounts if you follow Essential Marketing Group, it ain't me on the screen 98% of the time. Like I'm not that person that is going to just put it all out there. And I think it does come from that imposter syndrome, that feeling of like, you have no business being in an influencer space or not that I'm trying to be one, but
No.
all, in reality, when you are selling, which it
Hmm.
doesn't matter if your post is a sales pitchy thing or not, but like we are selling our
Hmm.
services and like even I'm glad that you send the invoices because sometimes I look at the work that we've done or what I've done and yeah, that took me some time and there was some effort that goes in there and I know that the average Joe couldn't have done that in the time that I spent doing it. So it's worth what we're charging,
Hmm.
but there's something that makes me feel like somebody else is not going to see the value in what I
Hmm.
just created in the same way that I do. And not one time have we run into giving somebody an invoice and they're like, that wasn't worth that word. Like not one time. People know and they get it and there really is value to that. But it's taken a little bit of time to build the
Hmm.
confidence in what we're doing, the services that we provide, the rates that we're charging, and feeling grounded in our worth from that perspective. And, it's taken a couple of years. I still think it's funny how, people that I knew in that past world would be like, "How's business going?" And I'm like, are they waiting for us to be like, "Well, actually, we're both waiting tables on the side and also like looking for a
Hell
different
no.
job." You know what I mean? But it's like I'm
Yeah.
so excited to be like, "We're good. Things good."
Yeah.
Now, could they be
Mhm.
better? Yeah, always. It's still a very young, growing business, but I'm also grateful for the rate that it is growing because we
Mhm.
have been allowed to grow into the roles that we're in and be able to manage it every step of the way. If you grow too
Yeah.
fast,
I mean,
you
people
fail
fail
faster.
because they grow too fast, and everybody wants more money fast. I didn't know. I felt the imposter syndrome again when I hired you and Mallory at the same time. With Lord, that was so stupid of me. You know what I mean? Because like to take on two salaries at the same time, like I didn't
Yeah.
know if long term, like I was like, I will figure this out even if I make no money. But I was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to pay your salary. Like I
Right.
was like, I know that I'll be able to do it based on the work that we have coming in monthly right now. But if
Right.
that
But what if it
changes,
doesn't keep going? What if
yeah.
a COVID happens again? And
Mhm.
obviously, I don't get lost in those sort of what ifs because there's a billion of them and it doesn't matter where you work. Those what ifs could still happen
Mhm.
and wreck your world. And God
Yeah.
forbid should something crazy happen, we'll
And
make
I'm
it
not even
through.
talking about COVID. I'm talking about that if 5 of our clients had left,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to pay the salary that you needed to make, right?
Right.
And then the thing is that I had a little bit of a safety net whenever I hired you guys because I have Dan, right? Like he wouldn't have let me go hungry or,
Right.
go into bankruptcy or anything like that. But I never like I don't want to bring my business into his expenses. Like that's and luckily it's not something that we had to really deal with at all, but it was a real worry. And for anyone starting a small business, don't hire two full-time people at the same time. Anyway, but I'm glad that it
I
worked
can't
out like it
apologize for
did.
that. I'm glad to be here.
No, but you guys both were like, I have to be done like within the same week. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's like when you
Oh,
find out you're
here we go.
pregnant at 40 and you're like, oh my God. And then they're like, it's
Okay, but
twins. And I'm like, oh my God.
But in hindsight, like, thank God you brought us on at the same time because
Uh-huh.
I learned early on that, like, I can do social media. I know how to do that. That is not what I'm the most passionate about. And we got
Uh-huh.
a huge influx of social media clients, obviously
Uh-huh.
over time or whatever. But within
Uh-huh.
the last 2 years, and Mallory
Uh-huh.
is great at it and loves it.
Uh-huh.
And as the websites and the branding inside, and some of the random things that we've taken on over the last couple of years. If I had been saddled with all of that, I wouldn't have been able to take on as much of the things I was really passionate about. And when you
Uh-huh.
think about that, it would have landed me right back where I was from that corporate mentality of like, well, this is what I want to do, but I have to do all of this stuff
Yep.
just to get to this. And I'm grateful that we don't have to do that. And even if the roles were reversed, okay, so let's say that you hadn't brought me on and Mallory came on, she wouldn't, I mean, you wouldn't be able to go out and build the business the way that you're spending your time now. She wouldn't have been
Uh-huh.
able to take on all the things that I'm doing and what she's doing.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's three people's worth of work to do. So,
Uh-huh.
like, the Lord knows what he's doing, right? It all happened the way that it
Yeah.
did for a reason. And
It
I'm
really
grateful.
did work out. Yeah, it really did work out, but it just looking back, I think about that there were so many times where I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And I think that a lot of people run into the same thing. They're like they they get out of corporate and maybe they have a direction, maybe they know exactly what they're doing. Both of us knew exactly what we were going to do, but I think that everybody runs into these feelings and they're
Yeah,
okay to
for sure.
have and they are normal to have. And I wanted to talk about it for that reason because I think that probably some people feel very isolated, like, why is everyone so good at this and I'm not? And it's like, first of all, we're not good at this.
We're
And you
just doing what
probably
we know to do.
yeah, you probably are just great at it, but I think that I did a really good job, didn't let people down, like handled the whole thing
Mhm.
well. And then you guys have continued that with the great reputation that I feel like that we have. But I felt like I sucked at it most of the time,
I
and
see it
I
from a
I don't think
completely
I
different
probably did.
perspective. I've been so proud of you because you just like stepped in from the word go. And, even though I wasn't on your team from the get go, like doing the work and all the things, like we've been best friends for longer than we've been working well, no, not longer than we've been working together, but
Mhm.
longer than we've been
The
doing
same.
this
Hmm.
together. And
Yep.
so I was still like in your ear. You were in
Hmm.
my ear while you were starting all of this stuff. And like just your tenacity through all of this has been so wild. And it makes me want to ask you, like, through this, like, feeling of being a fraud, through the imposter syndrome and the, oh my God, I'm taking a huge risk, not only with my own livelihood, but now, moving forward, bringing on other employees, like, this is a huge responsibility that I'm inviting into my life. Like,
Uh-huh.
how has leaving corporate, and that's probably two separate questions, but how has leaving corporate and then running your own business, the impact of those things affected your self-worth?
So actually, I mean, I just talked for several minutes about feeling like a fraud, but it has built my confidence beyond anything else, right? Because
Yes.
I think that when you're in a team situation, a corporate situation, you can get shout outs, you can get recognized, you can have a boss that tells you that you're great at what you do, but no one ever really knows where these all the results come from, you know?
Yeah.
So,
It's a
like,
little
we were on a
untangible.
team yeah, we were on a team that just, like, got shit done, and I don't know that anyone could ever tell that I was the one that was good at that, or that I accomplished that, and it's not that I needed that, but it's really cool to start a business, and every single win is yours until you have a team, and then obviously it's pretty obvious who's, kicking ass or
Right.
whatever, but it's like I was so nervous about bringing you guys on and having a situation where I couldn't pay you enough that you could keep this as your only job or, go and get a whole other job. And I'm really proud that I made that happen and that we're continuing to make it so that you can have a little bit more money each time, But so I'm really proud of that and I'm really confident in that. And I think that while you get less accolade, there's not anybody like I network with a lot of people. I see a lot of people out. I have clients that will shout me out in these meetings or tell us how great of a job that we're doing.
But it
Um,
only comes from
but
clients. There's no
yeah,
boss to tell you.
no, but the thing is that who cares what a boss thinks? Like our
Yeah.
clients, the people who are paying us their hard earned money, are super
They are the
freaking happy
boss.
with us. Do you want to hear? So today at a meeting, I ran into the owner of or the founder of Marcy's project, and she was like, oh my gosh, because obviously I met with her a couple of times, but so I was like, hey, do you remember me? And she's like, you're so familiar. I'm like, we made your website. She goes, oh my gosh. She's like, we get so many compliments on our website. And that was like your first one, right?
Oh,
Or one of your first ones?
well, yeah, I think websites, that was one of the first
Hmm.
projects. I mean, because
Yeah.
you had
But
like
she,
started it and then I came in.
mhm,
Yeah. But that one,
mhm.
yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, but it was just really cool because she's like, we get so many compliments about it and like, oh, so good to see you again, like so it was good to see her. But
Well,
it
full
was just
circle
funny
moment. That's
because yeah, well, and I just love that because those things they do fill me up. And so to answer your question, my transition was rough, right? It was rough
yeah.
because I was fighting myself on everything, every decision, because it was life or death kind of, I wasn't willing to go work for anyone again. So I was like I have to make this work and now I feel so freaking proud. I feel proud all the time. And I I think that this was the best thing because there's a lot of beatdown that can happen in corporate. Even if you don't have a bad boss, even if you have excellent coworkers and all that stuff, like there are so many people who count little just hiccups as failures
Yeah.
um or they
Setbacks of
blame yeah setbacks, they blame you for something that you had nothing to do with, or you gave coaching to somebody and they did it wrong, and you know what I mean, like who knows what the situation could be, but I had a lot of speed bumps, I guess, because when you work with 100 people on a daily basis, like from
yeah.
all of the marketers, all of the partners, all of the department, it's like there's so many more places where you can fail in someone's eyes, even if it wasn't a real failure. And it's really
I will
nice
tell
to
you,
just kind of control that.
one of the things that has positively, in fact, impacted my self-worth in this new role that I'm in is because I don't work with 100 people on any given day and I'm not somewhere different, working with a different group of people all the time. I feel like I'm making less impacts, but in a much bigger way, right? So I'm way more fulfilled to get to see a project to completion rather than having a little bit of a hand in a whole lot of somebody else's success.
Uh-huh.
That was, very much part of our role in coaching was, your name is never in lights anymore, right? Like you are coaching other people to get to that place where they want to be. And I was good with that, right? Like that's the mom in
Mhm.
me. Like
Mhm.
you pump everything you have into your kids so that they will then actually like be fully functioning
Yeah,
adults
you
one
stand
day.
behind the curtain and cheer them on as they kill it, right?
So I had no problem with that, but we were only a part of their journey. Like they had to take those thoughts, ideas, suggestions, whatever, best practices, and put them into action. Whereas now I'm in a position where I'm taking somebody else's vision for their company or, their website or their branding or whatever it is I'm working on. And I have to like see their vision, still know those best practices and those things and give that advice in the same way that I would have as a coach. But then I'm the one that put those things into action and then turn it back over. And like to have a product that I can then, a deliverable, if you will, that I can then turn back over to a client with a pretty red bow. And they're like, that's
Mhm.
exactly what I saw. This is exactly what we needed. Like you brought my vision to life. It's the pride in like, I did that. I did that. You
Mhm.
spoke to the fact that some of the things that we got accolades for, it's like, yeah, the results were there, but like I'm not the only one responsible. So it feels a little fraudulent to take any kind of like a reward or recognition for something
Mhm.
that, yeah, it's
Was a
me,
team
but it's
effort. Yeah.
very much a team effort and like
Mhm.
that I'm not solely responsible for. But now it's like I get really excited when a client loves the work that we do.
Mhm.
I I laugh at myself every time because when I show a client a website, I'm like, this is like my favorite one I've ever worked on. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
I every freaking time because it's like every website I do, is a different creative outlet. The needs are different with that client. So
Mhm.
it challenges me a little bit differently. I get to learn things.
Mhm.
And then I get really excited about that process. I don't think I'll get bored of that because it's always somebody new. It's not the same set of needs. It's not the
Well,
same
and
aesthetic. It's fresh and new and challenging every day.
mhm.
And every time I do that in a way that is successful and I can complete somebody else's vision, it instills further in me that I am right where I need to be. I don't need to feel
Absolutely.
fraud. I don't need to feel like
Mhm.
an imposter that is just like trying to figure it out. Um,
Mhm.
I'm like actually have some value here and I've brought that to the table now in a
Mhm.
spreadsheet long list of clients that I can say,
Mhm.
yeah, we did that. This was
Mhm.
really great and there's value in that. But that's not to
There
say that
really
it's
is.
come with the weird intricacies of like relationship dynamics. Like when I think back to our corporate life, and I'm sure you would say the same thing, almost my entire social life was wrapped up in the people that I worked with. And that became
Uh-huh.
really strange for me upon leaving. Like some of my best friends, it's like, well, are we going to talk as often? Do we even have anything to talk about now? We don't work together anymore. You're not talking to me about your work stuff. It doesn't make sense for me to talk to you about mine. How do we connect? Did you
Yeah.
deal with that too?
Well,
Like, I mean, I know
I
that
obviously did. So, I think that I will never compare situations with anybody since I left first because our whole team has left at this point, but I was the first one. And
last
I
one's
mean the
last
team
thing.
yeah, the the team had split at that point, but we all still worked, together. Um but I was the first one to go. So everyone else was still fully in the grind of 80-hour weeks and all of the different things going on. So I felt it hard, right? That we can still talk, we still have everything in common, and we're still friends, but we don't have the same issues now. We don't have their,
Schedule, the routines of
yeah.
when we talk
Well,
was
and
so
I
different.
wasn't driving for 5 hours in a day. I wasn't, like there wasn't
Yeah.
those things going on. I didn't have the same routines, but I think that it was okay because obviously the people who I was closest to, we made it a priority. And then I just had to shift my expectation of I don't have to talk to anybody 3 times a day. You know what I mean? Like, and it used to be like that we would talk forever or be on FaceTime for hours at a time, even when we were just doing other things. I
Yep.
It was a little bit codependent probably, so it's like, this might
They're
be
probably a
good
little
for me to
unhealthy.
yeah, but it's probably good for me to step back. I think that some people don't understand that you can still have a really close relationship with people and only talk to them once a week, right? You actually get
Or
more to
even
the
less. Yeah.
yeah,
You get to the
but
meat
you
and the
can get to the
potatoes a
meat
lot
of a
faster.
conversation, yeah, if you don't have to talk through every single step of everything that you went through because you're talking every day and that's how you get it all
Yeah.
out.
So I totally agree with you. And I was never really worried about those people, like specifically our team. Like those
Uh-huh.
were real and genuine relationships. And I knew that because we had things in common that had nothing to do with the work. So that part was easier for me. But then like, there's all of the managing partners that we worked with, the market partners, the other people on, extended support teams, those things where it was like, this really is, it's my outer bubble, if you will, of my social life. But what do I have without this? And at first, it was really hard because whereas your phone used to blow up all the time with all of these people, you have to like remind yourself that while you did have a relationship with them and you were actually friends, they were calling you because they needed something. It was work related, right?
Uh-huh.
And now they're not calling you because you're not providing a service for them. You don't work there anymore. They have to call somebody else
Uh-huh.
to get their needs met in the way that you were before. And I had to like really tell myself it's not personal. They're not
Uh-huh.
rejecting you. You just don't work there. And one of the beautiful things that has come out of it is, I've had one that I was really, really close to, like get promoted not all that long ago. And like, I'm
Uh-huh.
like on text messages, like, I'm your biggest freaking cheerleader. I've watched you grow for this long. I know that you deserve this.
Uh-huh.
You're going to kill it. And even though we've had maybe 2 conversations since I left the company, like I am no less in her corner. And I would be willing to bet that if I were to
Yeah.
see her out tomorrow, we would probably dive into a huge long discussion and it would be like nothing, nothing ever changed, right? Like those relationships
Mhm.
aren't gone, but the
I
frequency
think
of
it's a
those
little bit more out of sight, out of mind, right? But it's
right.
still, you love them still. It's
Right.
just,
The frequency
yeah, they
doesn't
don't
have to
need as
be what
much.
it was. It was like
Yeah.
we were so overstimulated in that way of
Yeah.
like constant involvement with all of these people. And now that
Hmm.
that need has fallen away, my nervous system had to catch up to that to realize my
Hmm.
friendships don't actually require 5 times a day chickens. It's okay if it's
No.
once a week. It's
Hmm.
okay. And some of those things kind of happen naturally, like you had left before I did. I think Macy had left shortly before I did. Sarah was still there, but then Sarah had a baby. And so her whole life completely changed too. And so there was a lot
Uh-huh.
of changes happening because it's life, right? Everybody's life is
Uh-huh.
doing its own thing. And I'm just so happy that there's not one relationship that I look back on and go, that one wasn't real. That one was all about work. They were just playing the game, or I was just playing the game. There's any one of those people that if they were to call me tomorrow and need something, I would be right there because I do love them. And just because I've
Uh-huh.
kind of fell off the grid doesn't mean that I don't. I just, my life took me another direction. And, like the frequency of the relationship has shifted.
Uh-huh.
And it can be a mind fuck. It can be a
Yeah,
real,
it
real
has.
challenge to wrap your head around.
It is. And, I think that one of the things that was the hardest for me was not being needed anymore, right? So I'm not thinking about the friend part of it. It's that, instead of calling me, now they called this person or now they called you or
Now, job
whatever it
it was
was.
to do whatever.
Mhm.
You weren't getting
Yep.
blown up 50 times a day because somebody needed something for you when you're used to being the mother hen meeting those
Yeah.
needs.
Well, I always would tell the marketers, I would always say, I need to be needed. Do not feel bad to reach out to me. Like I knew that about myself. That was not something I figured out after people didn't need me all the time. had maybe a year into my business, I started having anxiety attacks and they were so weird. I had never had one before and I still don't know that it's an anxiety attack, but that's what I narrowed it down to. And I figured out that it's because I wasn't needed anymore. I wasn't needed all day, every day.
Yeah.
And
Your nervous system didn't know what to do with that.
no, and it's so crazy because it made me feel lonely, even though I was not lonely, right? I had
Mhm.
a social life, I was doing all this networking, I was totally fine, but it made me feel lonely because I didn't have anybody who needed me constantly.
Yep.
And it took until probably when I met Dan, because then you start having these other people, who need you.
You
And
fill a different role for someone else, and it helps to
yes,
substitute that for you.
hmm
I think all of this
it was
is
huge.
really, really powerful for anybody that is stepping out of corporate or, having that post whatever identity crisis. The biggest thing that you have to realize is that it's not a crisis, right? It's a process and you're inside of
Uh-huh.
it, right? So just
That's
being
so smart.
aware.
It's a process. Yeah, like, I didn't think of it like that. I was like, "This is hard,"
Oh yeah, I just
But
got
it's
hooked.
like everybody goes through this. So it is a process, and you just have to get to the other side in the best way that you know how. That's smart.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Big stuff. And, in all the things that we're talking about, I really hope that this resonates with other people who kind of have those things. And if nothing else, just know that it's normal. You're not the only one. And at the end of the
Mhm.
day, like, if there's one thing that I can tell you is you are not your job. You are not your title. You are not the
Mhm.
signature on your email. Take the time, go through the fear to figure out who it is that you want to be because you can be whoever it is that you want to be. And while
Mhm.
that in and of itself is really scary and you feel the weight of responsibility of getting that right, it is a process. And it's okay if you go try yoga and then you freaking hate it. So you go do, I don't know,
Mhm.
taekwondo instead. Do what you got to
Taekwondo,
do.
where did that
Yeah.
come from?
Well, it's just something I'm not going to do. So that's
No, we would
it's what
never do
came out. I'm just
taekwondo.
saying, no, like I'm not going to join a
Hey,
running
if
club.
there's anybody if there's anyone who gets through these hard times with taekwondo, put it in the comments. We're
We
not
need to
judging
know.
it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this conversation. Every time, it's just therapy. We're just getting it
Yeah.
all out of the system.
I know, I know. And I hope that it helps somebody on the other side. And I would actually like to encourage anybody listening that if you have anything to add or another perspective of that identity crisis that we're talking about, throw it in the comments. Go check us out on social media. We want to hear what your perspective is because, you may be on this journey and you may be right and fresh in the middle of it, or you've come out the other side. When I look at myself and even in you, Mandy, I feel like we are in the thick of it. We are still in the process of reinventing ourselves every day and digging a little bit deeper and learning. So come
hmm
just be on the bus with us to this journey of God knows where we're going.
I love it. Should I try and get through and tell everyone where to find us? I know that that's always hard for me. Okay,
I
so
think you
you
should.
can
It'll
find
be a
us.
great test.
You can find us at thecorporateburnouts.com, at the Corporate Burnouts Podcast on Instagram, at the Corporate Burnouts on TikTok. And we really want you to go to the website and tell us your secrets because we still want to tell everyone's secrets anonymously, of course. So please
If
go
it's
on our
not some
website.
juice, come on.
Yeah, and even if it's not a secret, we also have a place where you can tell us your corporate stories. It is so, again, it's therapeutic for us to tell our stories and how we were feeling while in corporate, after corporate. It might make you feel better to tell your story about what happened that made you leave or what's happening right now that's making you go, what the heck? So please, please just leave us
Let
those
us
on the
in.
website.
Work
Yes.
besties. We got you.
Yes. All right.
All
Thank you,
right. We'll see
Mandy.
you
Let's
guys
talk soon. All right.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.